Good morning, everyone. It's nice to be here. It's my fourth year in a row in Belgrade, and second time working with Anna at an event. And my first thing I have to say is I am so impressed with how this community has grown. 4 years ago, when I came here for the first time, I was with a company called Small PDF, and there was a common knowledge, or maybe not a common knowledge, misconception, that Belgrade is only good for engineers and designers, that you can't find a good PM over here. You can't find good PM, you can't find good BD. It's just the functional things you can learn at the university that people are good at, and that the product community, in general in Eastern Europe, and I'm Eastern European as well, does not exist. And for me, it's really, really astonishing to see how this community has grown, how the quality of product management in Serbia has evolved over the last 4 years. And now, as we are talking, we are a completely remote company. So we hire all across Europe. And we are seeing so much talent coming from Serbia and the region as a whole that it's really amazing. And Anna, again, congratulations. It's amazing the amount of effort you've put in. But this is just amazing. So, what I'll talk about is mostly my insights from essentially being part of 6 different scale-ups, 7 if you count Branch. It's an interesting thing to join the scale-up at the Series B as a CPO because, well, if it's going well, usually that position is not available. So you're joining because something is messed up. And you're joining because something is so messed up that the team couldn't figure out how to fix it in the first place. So they essentially got to the point where, okay, now we have to bring someone from outside to help us figure it out. There are many things that are messed up at Series B, anything from your technical depth, which can be eating you, to the size of your market might turn out to be smaller than you expected. But what I've experienced across all of these companies, as well as companies that I advise, is that quite often the problem really that is at the core of everything is the lack of alignment between marketing, sales, and product. So before I jump into telling you how the symptoms look like and what are the solutions, let me share a story. So I think it was back in 2017, I joined a company called Leanplum. It was supposed to be the next big unicorn, backed by Klarner Perkins, Shasta, Canon, just tripled. Everyone in Silicon Valley was telling this is the next big thing. And the product was really exciting. We had customers like Tinder, GrabTaxi, Lyft, Coinbase, really, really amazing customer base. And many of them, the largest customers I've ever actually worked with, the largest customer was paying us $5 million a year. So really, really a strong enterprise solution. And when I joined, one of the first things I wanted to do is essentially to be as many customer sales calls, really learn how we sell, what really works for our product. So I joined one of these calls. Actually, the entire leadership and product joined that demo. And it was the classic enterprise sales, meaning not a single user is on the call. The seller also has never used the platform, the salesperson. So they're just talking about the slides. There's a nice checklist. We have this feature. We have that feature. Great energy. And as we move on, the buyer starts asking questions. The buyer has no idea about what they're actually asking about. They just got a list from their internal customers, and they go through the list of questions, which after a week in the company, I instinctively have a feeling the answer is no and no. But I hear, yeah, it's all good. Everyone has it. We can definitely build it, and essentially a lot of promises. The sale went so well that we actually sold the deal. We signed the deal. And after 6 months, they negotiated their one-way contract out of and churned because half of what was sold was not there. So as I started working more with the company, I started noticing certain things. First of all, our roadmap, our backlog was massive. I don't remember if it was 100 or 120, but somewhere around that amount of items about the roadmap for 2 years, and all of the items have been promised to customers to be delivered. As the team was really rushing to deliver on them, they were hacking a lot of things. So the platform obviously was suffering, and we started having outages, late nights in the office. Soon, our CEO, who came from Google, had this concept of color reds, which were sort of the really crisis times where you have to work Saturdays and Sundays. The code red became sort of the weekly thing. In the office Saturday, Sunday, you're working, but you're not making progress because you can't, because there's just too many things, too different things that you're trying to go. And at the same time, when you have a conversation about it, it's not like the CEO wants to admit that you have this problem or the board wants to hear about it. They see a unicorn growing, it's tripled, now it's time to double this year, just deliver, find a way, figure out. I'm sure there is a solution to it. So I realized there's no way for me to actually talk them into this. So this has to be a real experience, conclusion that essentially they can arrive to on their own. So I spent the weekend and wrote this stupid app that you can see a screenshot on the left. Essentially, it was an app that pretended to be an e-commerce solution for selling avocado-related products. I think this was the period where everyone had to have avocado toast in San Francisco, so it just fit nicely into that. I gave this app to everyone, and I told them, hey, here are the 15 use cases we are selling. This is sort of your script as a new person joining. Please go and implement them. I gave them 2 weeks, but as always in this kind of cases, the Sunday before the workshop, I started getting calls from the CEO, from the CTO, both founders, from many members of the sales team, essentially saying, how do I do it? I cannot find this feature. It doesn't exist. Or there is this feature, but it works differently. You told me I need to send X number of messages, but something else happened. What's going on? And I can tell you that 2 of the top 5 use cases that somehow were featured in our sales deck were actually not supported by the platform at all. A couple of features work differently than advertised. You could maybe bend your mind to think that they will work similarly, but it was harder. And our founders were able to complete 7 out of 15 use cases on their own. Obviously, that's not really what everyone expected. Pretty much a depressing Monday. But at least you know where you are. So what really transpired? The first thing that transpired is we actually didn't know who our right customers were. We had every kind of customer. We had financial technology, car delivery services. Even Walmart somehow creeped in as our customer, even though it's completely different business and different needs. And our customers used us for a lot of things. We didn't design the product, but somehow we ended up supporting. We had an A/B testing solution, and our customers were using it as a feature flags for their products. We had a marketing solution that our customers were using for support, even hacking our in-app messages to serve as chatbots. So there was a lot of really interesting things that they wanted us to continue developing that we couldn't. So there was no agreement on how the product should evolve. But what was also very clear is that we had this separation between the 3 teams. So marketing was measured on leads, not really on quality, just on leads. So they were finding the customers that were the cheapest to find because they were measured on customer acquisition costs and the number of leads. So they delivered a large number of leads. Then sales look at those leads and they look at the ones that they get the largest commission because that's very easy. If you pay me percentage of my salary, and by the way, one guy on our sales team in 1 year bought a house in San Francisco with the commission. So that's an achievement if you know the prices in San Francisco. Essentially selling. But none of them worried about retention because it was enough the customer was closed. You get your commission. If a year later they churn, well, that's a customer success problem or product problem. They will solve it. They will address it. And obviously, product priorities also reflected that. Instead of looking at how we can serve the most customers or the customers that generate the most revenue, we essentially had one customer at risk or one deal driving the biggest thing on the roadmap. In some cases, the most extreme case was Coinbase. They had 6 months of requirements for our team, and we couldn't find a single customer in the world that had the same requirements. They were all security. Coinbase is really hacked a lot, or attempted to hack a lot. And when we talked to Bank of America, they looked at us and they said, you must be crazy. We don't need this. CIA needs this. Try to pitch CIA, maybe they need it, right? No, CIA didn't want to buy the product. So we had this kind of problems, and that's essentially how the roadmap was built. And funny enough, this is maybe the most extreme example, but I would say some variant of this example has happened at every company I've been with. Even the ones that turned out very successful. When I came to Typeform, I asked who's our customer, and our CMO told me, I am not sure if we are B2B or B2C. Okay, so how do you choose who you target? I don't, we try everything. Right, so that's kind of a classic example. So do you have this problem? I generally look at this as 4 types of symptoms, and probably this would be better portrayed as an onion. But usually what you see on the top is, first of all, unmanageable churn. That's the first symptom every product person will see. They churn for different reasons, often contradictory. They will mention product, but they are requesting very different things. And you realize that there is not 1 or 2 silver bullets that you can just build to reduce the churn problem. And usually that churn comes from really unclear value proposition, or a value proposition that kind of is different for every customer. So if you sold everyone something else, they will want to continue evolving in that direction. And the one in below is essentially you don't have your clear ideal customer, target customer, however you want to call it. So you sell to everyone, and it's very common when you have the pressure triple, triple, double, double that VCs like to say, you sell, because otherwise maybe the CEO will be changed. And finally, it all comes down from a very simple thing. You don't have a single common understanding of your customer across the company. And that happens even in companies that have excellent research. Typeform, amazing research team, probably the best I ever worked with, that have excellent product team. But simply because the knowledge is siloed, every department develops their own understanding, their own ideas, and they go in different directions. So let's talk a little bit about it. Unmanageable churn. What it means, retention prediction is hard. This is a funny thing. Every company I go with, I try to build a model with machine learning to predict who's going to churn. And every single time I fail. And every time I go to the book and I say, okay, according to this book, this should work. Why it doesn't work? Well, it doesn't work because everyone churns for a different reason, and you cannot predict the reason for which they're going to churn. So the other thing that usually you see is the customers go to a product that you never considered your competitor. Like the first thing that happened at Leanplum is someone went to Amplitude. And I was like, but we are marketing automation and A/B testing, and they are an analytics company. Why people go to Amplitude? Because they used us for analytics. They actually didn't use us for the use cases we actually originally designed this platform for. Every renewal is painful. The most painful one for me, the most painful customer was actually Grab Taxi, who put in their contract requirement for me to fly to Singapore every quarter for every single customer business review, so they can actually see the progress of our commitments in the contract because we were not really good at delivering them. So every quarter I had to fly to Singapore, bow my head down, and explain where we are and how we're going to deliver all of the commitments to them. And obviously your product becomes overburdened with a lot of features. So this is a common pattern you see in a lot of products, that you start and it's the easiest to use. It wins the market because it's so easy to use. Slack. How did Slack win when everyone already had a messaging solution before? Because it was so easy to use. Now, if you haven't used Slack for the last 6 years and you're just a new user, you come in and you're like, oh my God, there's this channels things and that, and I don't understand. There's so many features. I need a book for Slack to use it. And essentially what happens is 2 years from now, we're going to have a new Slack that's going to start with 1/10 of the features, going to make it easier, companies will grow, and the cycle will continue. But unfortunately, if you don't really are careful about this, the cycle also will hit you. Your product starts as the easiest to use and then ends up being the one disenfranchised. So what happens? How do you alleviate them? First of all, I mean, it's a very simple thing. I think, Phil probably teaches that a lot. But the most important thing is look at the density of needs. What percentage of your customers have the most needs in common that also fit with what you're serving? And unfortunately, quite often that reference customer might not be there. And you have this very difficult conversation where you have to go to the CEO and then eventually to the board and say, I'm sorry, Bank of America is not a good target customers for us. We have to let them churn. But it needs to happen. You have to build for a very homogeneous audience, so essentially you have the capacity to fill them. The second thing is track churn by segment. Can be really, really stressful when you see 45% churn a year. Going back to the Typeform example, they have a lot of consumers coming in. And one of the use cases I'm actually going to talk is weddings. And guess what? Your wedding happens and then you churn. Because you don't have a second wedding this year, so you don't need a subscription product. So you join for 3 months, you got your list, people sign up, you know who has an allergy, you know what they will deliver as presents, and then they churn. And your boss comes to you and says, you need to address this churn. Well, how do I address this churn? I get them to get divorced and then marry again. I mean, this use case doesn't work, right? So the second thing is you actually have to take the people who join for a wedding and say, no, we're not going to track their churn with the rest because they're not our ideal customers and they actually confuse everyone and makes us focus on the wrong things. So you have to understand who is your target customer, expansion customers, and then anti-customer that you will never serve. And I think for me, the best example of this is MailChimp. MailChimp has a massive churn problem. If your business is successful, their product will not serve you in 2 or 3 years' time. You're going to move to HubSpot. And they had 2 options. They either could build HubSpot and essentially forget about the ease of use, add 200 features, make it better for 500 people company, or say, we will celebrate every customer that moves to HubSpot because that means our platform allowed them to be so successful that their business expanded. They picked the second option, and they are still the SMB's #1 solution for emails, for marketing, because they are not trying to be something just to retain a few customers that were successful with them. And there is a second example, Amazon. So I had a CEO, one of the founders, who had this practice at Amazon that he would order 7 pairs of headphones, test them, and then set 6 of them back. He would spend a lot on Amazon. I think easy he was spending $5,000 to $10,000 a year on Amazon. And one day he got an email, and the email said, you're fired. You actually cannot buy from us anymore again. Sorry, but we don't like you. You order 7 things, you send 6 back. That doesn't work for our business model. Thank you. No, thank you. You cannot buy from us. He can't buy still. I think 8 years later, still not allowed to buy from Amazon. And that's the thing, right? You have to make a decision. Who is a good customer? And instead of trying to retain someone by building things, sometimes the right decision is, I'm sorry, we just have to fire you. We will not help you. You're not the right fit for us. We are very happy to recommend you another one. Unclear value proposition. I mean, we all know what it means. It means marketing, sales, and product actually think that we are selling a different thing. What it leads to is obviously customers get confused, or even worse, they hear one of the messages and they really believe that this is what they came to buy, and then they realize they actually bought something else. It's misleading marketing campaigns. It leads eventually to a weak product market fit perception because people start saying, well, they sold me on this and they're not really good, so their reputation gets worse. And of course, internally, it's also hard because you don't know what you should be building, marketing, and so on. I picked this example, I think it must be at least 15 years from now, from Apple. But Apple has this one thing, that they just know what they are selling. Or at least they used to know what they are selling. Now their campaigns are starting to get a little bit like Dell. But in the past, okay, we built MacBook Air. Why? Because you wanted it in a laptop. I'm not going to tell you about this video camera. I'm not going to tell you about the memory. I'm not going to tell you about the wonderful OS. It's the thinnest laptop. You need a thinnest laptop? That's our laptop. You need something else? Pick something else. Very simple. You know what you're building. Amazon. Amazon works very well because if you look at Amazon, it's really just three things. I want something delivered fast, I want it to be cheap, and I want to have the biggest selection possible. As a PM, it's a very easy job. If you're moving one of those three metrics for your company, you're moving the right thing. If you're not working on one of these three things, you're probably wasting money. And with something as simple as that, you can manage essentially the entire product strategy. You don't have to know the entire strategy of the company. Even with these three simple principles, you can actually make good decisions. So, first of all, you need to know what those principles are. Second thing, you need to diagnose all of your content. And thirdly, you need to diagnose your roadmap. This is very common. I come in, I look at the roadmap, and I'm like, we're building nothing of what we are promising to customers. Why? Well, you know, there's this example and this edge case and this and this. No, just get rid of it. You're not going to build a product for everyone. Stick to what you're building. No clearly identifiable ICP. So what you can see over there is actually the example which still exists from Typeform. It drove me crazy when I was there. I was unable to remove it, and it still exists. So there's online wedding invitation template. You can actually go, find it online, and as you can see, it serves the logos that we put to actually say we are the right company for you to work with us is Airbnb, MailChimp, Hermes, HubSpot, and Barry's. So if you're planning your wedding and you're looking for a template and you arrive and you see, okay, so Airbnb and Intuit is using them, that doesn't really necessarily resonate with you, but it also tells you how confused the entire company is. We don't know who to serve. So we put logos for the people who pay us a lot of money, but we build stuff for people who pay us nothing because, and by the way, I can tell you the original idea behind this. We don't know who's getting married. Maybe a CEO of a company is getting married, and that's how they will discover the product. I can tell you, I've looked through our entire analytical set. It never happened. Never. Maybe it will happen one day. And, you know, I will tell this story 3 years from now, and someone will tell me, no, actually, sorry, you know, the CEO of Accenture was getting married, and now Typeform is at Accenture. So if you don't have that, obviously, you're going to have a scattered customer user base, misaligned expectations, product will become harder to use over time, sales will struggle with messaging. I mean, it's really hard to say what Typeform does. By the way, Typeform is a great example of this because when I asked the board what we are, they told me, well, you're kind of more advanced SurveyMonkey. You should be serving universities and research teams. When I went internally, there was a big belief we are actually a B2C company and we should be investing in quizzes, storybooks, things to do immersive content online for consumers. Our largest group of signups was coming from Indonesia because the government of Indonesia was using us for quizzes for teenagers. So we were getting about 100,000 Indonesian teenagers a month signing up, never paying $1. So you had that. And then when we actually looked at who paid us the most money, it was marketeers. And you look at this and you say, okay, yeah, I'm not surprised that we have a great product and we can't grow with this approach. So how can you alleviate the symptoms? I'm going to start with the example over here. Has anyone ever used Superhuman? Yeah, so it's a mailbox company, pretty good. When I tried to sign up for them, they wouldn't take my money. They asked me to fill a survey. And in that survey back then, I said I use Grammarly a lot. So sorry, we don't support Grammarly. So I still would like to buy a product. I said no, because no, we know you're going to churn. You're going to use this product, then you realize that you actually need Grammarly when you write emails. So we won't sell you this product until we have Grammarly subscription integration. Similar thing happened to me with a company called Workato, and that was in B2B. So Workato, if you're not familiar, they do business automation processes. They can provide you with integrations if you need. We wanted to buy them for Typeform as a white label solution to offer additional 100 integrations on our platform. Met with their CPO, and he looked at me and said, no, we won't sell you. Why? Because we are not ready to offer this as a white label. We're not ready to scale, and if I sell you, I'm going to have to scale things. I'm going to have to make certain features. We just don't have a bandwidth for that. This was $250,000 they left on the table because it was not part of their strategy. And I think that's the most important thing. You have to be comfortable saying no to money in order to stick with your strategy. So, core things. First of all, agree who your ICP is. I've done massive studies on it, but to be very honest, in my experience, when you take 10 people in the room and you ask them and they talk for an hour, you'll get within 90% of precision of what doing a 6-month study will tell you. Your people usually know. They know who's selling, they know who's paying, they know who's churning, they know who's really taking advantage of the platform. Second thing, make sure that your leads actually predict that. It's quite surprising how many times I went and built a simple model to see how the marketing qualified lead or product qualified lead actually correlate to revenue from the customer and found zero correlation. Quite often it's based on some assumption. At Localize, we had an assumption that translators are really bad customers for us. Why? Because we sold to companies, translators, they're probably freelancers, they are probably signing up for our platform to learn how to use it, but they will never pay for it. Turns out completely wrong. I went through the data. Some of the biggest companies that bought from us, the actual buyer was a translator. And we never really had done the study. One salesperson just stumbled into a translator who was a freelancer and then told the story to the entire sales team, and very quickly it became the truth that the entire company followed with no one actually verifying it. And that was our MQL for 2 years, no translators. And finally, qualify customers. If they are not a good fit, I'll tell you, if you tell your customer, we are not the best product for you, that is a better product for you, they will come back next year and ask you, are you now the best product for me? Because so rarely someone actually is very open and transparent about it that people remember it and they continue back. Like I came back to Superhuman and I came back to Workato now as they actually have a white label solution. And finally, it all comes down from the fact that you actually don't know who your customer is. Across the board, in agreement. So there are fragmented customer insights, everyone collects them, everyone has their own conflicting customer data, and prioritization decisions are driven by that. So what do you need to do? You need to create a customer single source of truth. This is interesting because really it was enabled by ChatGPT for us, and I will explain how we build it, but it changed completely how we operate. And it even shortened the research to be 1/10 of actual development. So there is really a lot of value. Second thing we did is we actually opened the box of prioritization. We said, this is the backlog, this is how we prioritize. If you disagree with anything on this list, feel free to present to us why something else should be higher based on the principles we set. And then the third thing is we educate the company all the time about customers, not just what we learn about customers, but what sales learns, customer success learns, marketing learns, every single department. So how did we break the silos? Let's say there are 5 really components for us that I'll walk quickly through. Single source of truth. Then what kind of rituals we built to align ourselves. How we open the prioritization. How we change our features release process to align us. And finally, the role of dog fooding. You've seen already some examples of dog fooding in the past, but actually experiencing your own product is really something that makes a big difference for everyone in the company. And I don't know how many of your CEOs know your product very well and use it every single day. It's surprising to me how many I've met who've never used the product they are actually overseeing. Even worse, I was actually recently asked if I've used the product because one of our candidates was so used to CPOs not even using their own products. So tells you something. So what is our single source of truth? Very simple. All data feeds into the same place. So Clearbit enrichment of customers, Salesforce inputs, sales, research, customer success, calls. We record all of them, transcript all of them, they go to the single source. All support chats from Intercom, everything from our surveys, everything from feedback loops, and win-loss and competitor benchmarks. They are all going to the same table. All data is organized by customer problems. So we look at all the problems we are trying to solve for our customers and by their jobs to be done. Customer segment. We have a couple of different ways we are segmenting customers. And they are tied to active or backlogged features. And we've built 3 hubs. One we called Customer Insights Hub. That's where all this data goes. Second one is roadmap and backlog that links to all this customer data. And then finally, we have a customer comms hub that pulls that information to help us create communication. We used Airtable. I think Airtable is sort of getting into the product teams right now. Why? Because it's very configurable. We found other platforms to be very opinionated about how you should do product. We have our own opinion too, so we wanted to have a platform that allows us to do it our own way. It's integrated to all of those data sources and automatically pulls that data in. We have Airtable forms, so any salesperson, anyone actually in the company who has any kind of insights can submit insights through this form. Typeform user pilot to collect data from customers. And then ChatGPT essentially tags, analyzes, provides advanced search and summarization. To give you an example, recently we had a bit of a big debate about pricing. One of our competitors prices double of what we price. The other one prices 30% less. And that's a pretty big gap to be in between. So we started looking and having discussions about where we should go with pricing. And of course, the salesperson who lost the deal over price was very adamant that we need to lower prices by 30%. So we looked at the gone calls for the last 12 months with the support of ChatGPT, and we realized that out of 900 deals we were on, there were roughly 15 when that competitor with lower price showed up. So we would change by 30% pricing for the entire company for 15 instances out of 900 if we did not have this data. But before, a year ago, the way the decisions were made, that probably would have happened because it was just a very vocal case. Everyone has seen it. CEO was very excited about this. And obviously, there was a lot of energy in conversations in the room around it. So you can see some example over here. It's as simple as this. And yes, so what we do, the first thing we do is we look at reach. Now we have 900 calls with prospects. We have all the calls with customer success. We have all the calls that research did, that product managers did. If I am looking at specific feature requests, if I am looking at a specific problem to be solved, I immediately know not only what percentage of our customers and prospects have the same problem, I know who they are, what they have in common, what are the demographics, firmographics that they have in common. Second thing, helps to understand impact. We know what's the volume of mentions. We know what is the sentiment around them. Is this a big problem? Is it a nice to have? You can very quickly get these insights. And then the third thing is we can also look at trends. We can ask a simple question. How did it change over the last 12 months? Is it becoming more popular or less popular, more requested, less requested? For example, we have a feature to enable more collaboration with translators. That's been requested quite a few times. And we've looked at the number of requests, and I can tell you it dropped 90% in volume with the ChatGPT and Claude becoming better and better at translation, and our customers, instead of moving to translators, getting more and more through AI. If we didn't know, it was the next thing on the backlog for us to build because there was so much data to actually prove it, except that that data was invalid because there was a massive trend that really changed our prioritization. Alignment rituals. So first of all, what we do is we have bi-weekly product and go-to-market sync. It's very nice to have all this data. It's awesome. And if I could get people to actually regularly go and search through this data, my job would be done. But the reality is, you build this massive source of data, you build a nice UI, and then still 4 people in the company regularly go and check it. And the rest kind of just waits for someone else to do it. So the bi-weekly product and go-to-market sync is actually our opportunity for people to raise their questions, for us to look at them, for us to look at the data, explain the data, and make sure that we are all aligned around what the data says. Cross-departmental, every department can share their insights, can do requests, and we talk a lot about enablement as well. How does it need to change as we are learning new things? Product demos, bi-weekly company call. It has plenty of different purposes, obviously, anything from getting your product teams to actually be iterative and ship frequently. But for us, it also serves a very important thing. You actually see what's coming, you can see it, you can understand why we are building, you can criticize it, you can provide feedback early on. And then we have monthly reviews. Monthly reviews are usually relatively long documents where we explain everything that happens, how we are building. There are links, you can try the product. There's one for go-to-market and there's one for product. And we are audience for them, they are audience for us. This is where we align. This is where we negotiate changes. This is where we discuss what needs to be improved, what needs to be removed. Open prioritization. Really no rocket science. I think when I started, my first thing was to get as complicated as possible as a PM. I knew real options. I did this massive spreadsheets. You know, what will happen if 4 decisions are correct? What will be the value and so on? And to be very honest, it was at Nokia. It was kind of required. Also talking about a threshold for a decision. Nokia had a very simple threshold for a decision. If this product will make more than $500 million, we will invest. If it makes less than $500 million, don't waste our time. So you always had to prove this $500 million. So you build this massive spreadsheets and then went through this and realized that nobody actually believed in any of the assumptions, but you did this mental gymnastics. Absolutely unnecessary. You will not predict anything, to be very honest. If you're pre-product market fit, your assumptions will be just taken from the sky or taken from a competitor who is really different than you, but somehow resembles you, and you will definitely not hit their numbers. For us, it's as simple as this. Reach. What percentage of our accounts actually will use it? Impact. Does it solve a significant problem for them? Do they talk about paying for this in the calls? Do they actually express very strong sentiments around it? Confidence that we have based on the data we have. So do we need to do more research or we don't? And the confidence factors into it. And then effort, which is cost plus the engineering effort. It's very simple. Someone comes in and says, I need this feature. Cool. Where does it score over here? Oh, it's here in the backlog. But we have one customer and he really needs it for the deal. So let's look at the data together. Go back, still see that it's 5% of people who will use it, even with this new customer, and the decision is very simple, no. And there is no discussion about like this is a strategic customer or not, because we know if it's just 5% of customers, then maintenance, support, continue evolving this and so on will cost us much more, and it's just not worth as an investment. It will create product debt. How do we release? Well, why do I talk about releasing? Because releasing is when product and go-to-market come together. That's really where most of the discussions happen, and that's usually the forcing point for a lot of conversations to happen. We haven't invented anything over there. This is actually a framework we built at Typeform, and I've been reusing since then, but it works very well for companies of our size. We have 3 release windows, 1 or 2 big ones a year where we usually package a lot of features, couple of smaller ones where we package 2 or 3 features together that tell a nice story, and then a few that are released on their own. We have a process we go through where we work at every single step to validate it, and it starts with product brief and risk matrix for validation. So we started with the PR and FAQ, and to be honest, everyone I've noticed who got the PR put it in ChatGPT to be summarized so they could get 3 selling points out of it, and they didn't want to read it. So, and to be very honest, every PM also got their PR from the ChatGPT. They would just put the bullet points in the ChatGPT. So I was like, okay, there's no point of having people go to ChatGPT and then people using ChatGPT. So we can be much simpler. So we have a product brief, a few bullet points over there. It works relatively well. And then we have risk matrix for validation. So we understand what are the biggest risks, what do we need to advance. We go through the stages where we start developing marketing materials together, all the way to actually validated material. This is a very nice way to align this from the beginning to end. And these are the windows that we are releasing. You can more or less copy them. I think they apply to 90% of the world. You don't release during Christmas, you don't release during summer, you don't release during Thanksgiving, and you don't release during CES, although the role of the CES is declining right now, so maybe that January will open as less and less people actually go to Las Vegas to pay attention to what's happening there. And then we have a few windows that are very comfortable. And for us, one of the big windows is always September. People come back from holidays. They want to invest in something before the end of the year. That's where a lot of sales happen. All right, my last slide. I see the presentation hasn't been updated. Never mind. Pretend that the top headline says dog fooding. So why do we do it? Very simple. There is nothing I can tell you that will ever replace your experience of actually trying something on your own, stumbling, thinking about it, reflecting, and coming back with questions. There is this joke, how many psychologists do you need to change a light bulb? And the answer is one, but the light bulb wants to be changed. And the problem in most organizations is that people's opinions are hold very strongly, and people don't want to change. So you need to create a momentum for them to actually open up and say, okay, actually, maybe what I believe is wrong. Tell me more. And usually that momentum is personal experience. So for us, dog fooding is absolutely critical. It's not only, hey, there's some team that uses us for this. It's really CEO, CTO, salespeople. This is an app. This is the process. Follow it. Tell me how well it worked. What broke? Where did you have a problem? We get a lot of insights on what we can improve, obviously, but also they get a lot of insights on how they want to pitch us, what really works, what really resonated with them in the process, and how they can sell. So that's it from me. I have 5 minutes. Let's see if there are any questions. All right. No, I agree with you. And I think, it happens in startups mostly because when the founders start, they really know the market they are starting with. But then it changes.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
So a question, basically, how do you deal in these kind of organizations when you have the people, as I said, who don't have the product experience, who didn't come through that, let's say, life journey, but they are making decisions. They are management stakeholders, and you need to communicate these things to them for them that they are not very obvious. Like the issue that you said, you need to kind of push into the sales while the churn is happening, is like the thing that I'm seeing.
Yeah. So my biggest learning from Nokia is that I could never convince a VP they are wrong, other than I could get myself fired that way. So I can clearly tell you that building a 30 slides and going and telling them you're wrong, we should do it this way, doesn't work. 99% of the cases. And one of my bosses told me, because you're forceful, what you need to do is you need to plant a seed. So you plant a seed. And for example, dog fooding is a seed. Let me try the product. I'm not going to tell you what works or what doesn't. No, you just try it. Then you come and say, oh, this doesn't work. What do we do? Yeah, let's brainstorm together a solution. Right? So the point is you want to plant the seed. You don't want, and this is, I think there's Cialdini wrote this book, Pre-Selling. Right? I highly recommend every PM to actually read books about selling. You should also be able to sell your product. That's generally sort of my rule of thumb. But the big thing is it's hard to sell to people who are higher, and to some extent their idea of themselves is built around, I've been right through most of my career, that's why I'm here, right? They don't want to hear from you that they are wrong. So you need to help them figure out this without necessarily putting yourself in the middle of that. That's really what I can tell you.
Super, thank you.
Cool. We have, I think, time for maybe 1 or 2 more questions. All right. Hey, Victoria, how are you?
Thanks. I have a very practical question. I think what's a challenge with all the databases that track insights is to keep it somewhat clean. I understand that ChatGPT is apparently helping you a lot to give insights. Do you do anything else, regularly checking that people don't put trash there or something like that?
We do. So generally, our research team does not do any tactical research. So I have a very simple rule. I want PMs to hear as much raw information from customers as possible. So our UX researcher doesn't go and solve for you how you should build this particular feature. They solve 2 big problems. One of them is enablement. So essentially running this, making sure it's accurate, thinking about new sources, thinking about how we do it, and strategic research, who our ideal customer is. What is the next segment we should expand to? So essentially, the team's research sits within the team, but the research across 5 teams, or maybe which team should we build next, sits there. So they are actually doing the cleanup, but PMs do a lot of this cleanup too. Because the big thing is they know that once we have the monthly product review, there will be someone in the company who disagrees with them, and then they will go and actually check the data to make sure that it's correct. So it's actually in their best interest to make sure that the data is accurate as well. Cool. If there are no other questions, then I guess the next thing is a coffee break.